And away we go. Greetings and salutations, my friends and fellow gods. It is I, God Bahamut, doing my first time-lapse video of my artwork. So I did a rough sketch to begin with, and I'm just going over it and doing another secondary rough sketch. Because, well, I'm getting used to my new hand-drawn tablet. It's very different from my norm, which is just using the mouse. And so skills are vastly different. And, you know, now that I'm on my own, I left my graphic design company to do my own little thing. I picked up some new toys. I got an amazing new laptop. And I got this Wacom tablet to draw on, and it's very cool. It's very cool. And I don't like those big bulky hands at all, and I found that the neck was way too long. So we'll shorten it up and clean it up, make it all look nice and neat. So I'm just drawing in the feathers for this character from my novel, named Eldest. He's the eldest living member of this race, which is called the Vecrytorae. And they are, well, as you can see, snake people. So just bring in a little reference, ended up tracing it up for the hands because I did not like my own hands that I drew myself. They were very poor, much too clunky, and I don't know. I found that I didn't really like the way that the face was turning out with this one. It just didn't really seem too masky to me. So I ended up scrapping it all together. So now I'm copying my outlines so that I can create my flat layer for the colors. Ooh, look at that brutal outline. We'll definitely clean it all up, cover it up, make it look nicer. And so these snake people from my novel, they're called Vecrytorae, and they're basically the elves of my world. They're very long-lived. They, pretty much live forever. So I decided to do a little bit of the light angle come from the top right-hand corner. So I start blocking in some of the shadows where they'll be on my shading layer. It's always a good idea to have multiple layers so you can play around with the settings of each layer, easily grab all kinds of stuff, and it makes your life a lot easier in the end for tweaking and whatnot. So I think I wanted to have so his underbelly has a different height to it, give it a different feel from his actual scales, which are currently in just like a normal kind of skin tone to start with. I end up wasting my time shading the face, and I was like, God, I didn't really like the way that looks at all. I was definitely not happy. So then I go to the cleaning up because it just looks like a 3-year-old drew this, and want to clean it up big time. So we're going in, cleaning it all up, filling in the areas that are left behind by the mess of my lineage. So a lot of it is cleaning up the lines, making them look more crisp and flowing. He's pretty ripped for an old guy. So his full name is Shaman Raknerm Spiketail. And he's got that big headdress of feathers, all nice and pretty. I wanted to go very vibrant colors for his headdress, make it pop and kind of stand out. And so he's very instantly recognizable in his bright yellows and purples and greens and reds. And his headdress can actually, helps him to emote a little bit. And he does have very like blind white eyes that everyone just assumes that he's blind because of the way his eyes are, but he can actually see, but he sees the magic of the world. He's always seeing magic. So now I'm going in and adding some shading to it all on my little shading layer. Just a little bit more. Go a little more in depth with it. I'll kind of clean it up a little bit nicer. I wasn't really happy with the way the shading looked initially, so we'll fill it up a bit. And then I end up going over the shading again with to lightening it up and making it look more of like a gradient, like a fade. So it's interesting doing the shading on the white background. I thought it would make it easier to stand out. And actually, I did the scale. He's got tattooing on his underbelly, and I ended up just stealing that famous big wave pattern from that painting. And I was like, because I really like that painting. It's very iconic, and I thought it would be kind of cool to add that in there. And I didn't have it recording somehow. I guess it just messed up, so you didn't get to see that step-by-step process where I added tattoos for his underbelly. Yeah, now I'm going in with the highlights, still sticking with the sun coming in from the top right, and where would that hit on the flats there. There we go, cleaning it all up. I do a lot of cleaning. I wasn't happy with the way that the lines were at all. They were just too chunky and not nice at all. So I do a lot of tracing over again and again just to get there, get it to where I wanted it, so where I would be happy. My flats layers got a little out of control with the colors, so I had to go back in and fill them on in. Decided I don't like the tongue out either, so clean it up, straighten up some of the lines, thin them all up. They're too thick from my blocky initial draw. See, everything just needs to be cleaned up. You want to keep going over and over it until you're happy. You get to that point where you're like, yeah, this is cool. I like that. And in the end, I'm just like, I just don't like the way that's looking. A couple more edits to the shading layer. I didn't like the way that was kind of looking a little too off on the green colors. So I end up picking a different color for the shading for that point. And yeah, I'm definitely not happy with the face in the end. Just even the shape of it is a little too round, not snake-like enough for my liking. I mean, I want these to be humanoid-ish, but still have retained their snake. There are half-breeds, and they actually have ears. They have ear holes, and their eyes are not so snake-like reptilian. They have more humanoid, rounder eyes instead of the diamond-shaped pupils and whatnot. And then we'll say goodbye to the face completely. Just go over the highlighting a little bit more, make it a little bit more detailed and more realistic looking with the whole fade to it. Now, it's funny because I haven't even finished the scales portion of it, his skin pattern. Look at those shiny abs. There's the highlight on the tail, or his body leading to the tail, because these things are mostly snake body. That 2/3 of their whole body are definitely. And I didn't like the way that the curve of that tail, and I wanted to add more of the underbelly showing there as well. So I add a little bit extra to that. And there's trying a different head shape, because I definitely was not happy with the initial one. Get a strong chin, and that's just like a more of a reference line for where the half point is, to make it a little bit easier. So his head is slightly tilted, so that's why it's not symmetrical 100%. I didn't really like this Thanos jaw there. I was like, no, that's not it. We got an aardvark nose here, and maybe a robot of some kind. I was like, do you like the robot? No. Let's do a grid. So I'm just trying different shapes, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat, but that's more like a robot than it is a Vecrytorae, that's for sure. So I gotta fill in that stuff. I'm just playing around with shapes, and I kind of like those swirls. They're kind of interesting. But I'm still just playing with shapes, trying to figure out. Yeah, big pig nose just for fun. No, he's got more of a snub nose, so it's like a thicker kind of nose, not so elongated. There will be others who have like that elongated nose, and I did like the skull look. So we're giving them the swirls, because I do really like that, and I do like the skull, but I didn't want to have like swirl nostrils. Is where I initially was like, yeah, maybe we'll throw the nostril in here, but I think I'll just skip that. He doesn't need to breathe, does he? And so this character, he doesn't speak at all. He's just like the main character, and they both use telepathy instead of using their words to speak. So I wanted to kind of give it like that, like a grayish, almost like a skull feel to it, but I wanted to bring in the highlights from his feathers into his facial tattoos, and so that's exactly what I did. But it's still part of his body, and so I am gonna give it the scale treatment as well. So there's his like chalky white eyes, and I'm just playing around with some different textures and colors, and just going nuts with my new brushes, because I downloaded a whole whack of different texture brushes and all kinds of different things to play with, instead of drawing everything by hand, making my life a little bit easier. But it's something that I never really played with all that much. I never really had a big brush library, and now I've tailored my own little brush library, and playing around with different patterns and some stamps, and just to see what looks cool. I end up tweaking some brushes and taking the ones I have and doing some dual brushes, mixing and matching a couple of them together, and I found that I like some of the ones that I came up with are very, very cool, and they worked for what I was trying to get across, So just doing a little brush manipulation and playing around with the colors. I realized that some of my ant work, which is the highlighting lines around, so you stay within the area you're playing with, were over the edge and not covering everything. So I have to do a couple of clone stamp tools, and just wanted to give that the snake-like texture as well. just playing around with different colors, seeing what pops well with the other colors. And yeah, there's some of my overhang, so I got to go back and clean it up. And I wasn't happy with that. I guess it would be his left hand, the way the knuckles turned out. So cleaning up my drawing a little bit more and make those lines a little thinner, get rid of stuff that doesn't belong, and redrawing in, make it a little darker. And there we go. Let's change that bent knuckle a bit. There's the clone stamp tool to fill it on in. Oh, pardon me. And tweaking the shadows based on the skin tone. Now that I have the skin tone there, I wasn't liking the way that they were, so I basically go over everything and tweak it a little bit more, make it look more realistic for the skin itself, or his scales, as it were. Yeah. Finishing up with a little bit more highlight work, just cleaning it up a little bit. That shouldn't have much light to it because it's in a very dark area, and so we have to tweak that. And then I realized that none of this is done properly here, because that was the highlights for the old skull shape, and now that we've changed that, and I'm just softening it up a little bit and changing the color for that. Play around a little bit of some little blending there, make it blend a little better. So it was going outside, so the ants will help you there. There we go, nice and clean. Decide that definitely needs to be worked out a little bit. It's a little too harsh with the glare. And then we'll give it some actual sunlight kind of feel instead of that stark white by giving it inner glow. And now I always like to throw in a black background to make sure that your stuff hasn't gone beyond, because a lot of times it happens where you can't really see it on the white background itself, that there's some flaws to it. And I'm just playing around with the opacity and get it to a point where it's just like, yeah, that's nice, and I like that. And now I decide to whip up a quick background to throw them on using some of the neato brushes I have. Just super simple stuff, easy like that. Just something to throw them on. Didn't want to spend all that much time doing that. But yeah, just playing around with the backgrounds can be fun as well. And then we'll have our final product, Eldest Shaman Raknerm Spiketail. Very integral part to our story. I do hope you've enjoyed this and had a lovely time. Thank you for stopping by. We'll see you again soon. Remember, practice makes perfect. And always, always don't be afraid to go back and tweak your work. That's it. Beautiful. I was quite happy with the way he turned out.